corporations on sort of like their strategy. While I was at McKinsey, I started to think about sort of like my future, right? At year 3, I was thinking about my career aspirations and where I wanted to be. And then I decided to make the move to get an MBA. Historically, people make the move to get an MBA because of sort of like strategic career moves, right? Think about where you are now and where you want to go. Is there an opportunity for you to get there without getting a master's degree? If the answer is yes, then you don't need a master's degree. But also, if you think about getting where you want to get to, maybe you want to move geographically, or you want to change industries, or you want to change functions, then I would say you should. That's sort of like the purpose of an MBA. Think about an MBA as like a road trip. We call it roundabout in Nigeria, where you can come in one end and exit another end. And that's why I decided to go do my MBA. And making the decision about an MBA, there are a couple of criteria I used to decide on where I wanted my MBA. The first that I thought about was sort of like the school network I wanted to have. I knew I was going to be focused on African development in the future, and I needed an MBA with an alumni base that has a lot of presence on the continent. The second thing I decided was sort of like the academic curriculum. MBAs typically have 2 styles of academic curriculum. So there's the case-based and there is the regular classroom style that we're used to. I chose the case-based just because it prepares you for executive presence in the boardroom. Another condition that I thought about was location. What sort of geography do I want to be in for my MBA? You can either be in Europe or in the US or in Canada, right? I decided to come to the US to get that American experience before transitioning back. And so that's how I made my move to get my MBA at Harvard. Applied, thankfully got in, went through 2 years of my MBA program. I can also talk more about sort of like my experience applying, my experience getting into the MBA program. And then during my MBA, I decided to transition out from consulting towards operations. My major factor for doing that, 2 things. One, wanted to get some bit of American work experience. But second, I also did want to transition from strategy into small operations, hands-on experience, implementation, getting things done to complement those experiences for my future aspiration. And that's how I decided to make the move from consulting to operations after business school. And that's how I'm here today. I apologize. I do have a hard stop at 9:45, and so I'd just like to open this up to questions that people may have about making the move to go for masters, making the move to change locations, making a move on finances or relocation, or any other questions that you're thinking about. Anyone there?
Yes, please. All right, let's go ahead to ask our questions for those of us that have questions so that we can get answers to them. So the floor is open now. So just before people start asking their questions, I just have a question. So for people that intend to create a pathway for themselves, so they want to study and then at the end of it, they get a good job and be able to stay back, right, in the respective countries that they might decide to get a job at, what are the steps they need to take in order to ensure that they get that good job and then they get the opportunity to stay back at that country?
I think that's a good one. Every investor demands a good return on investment, and you can think about getting your master's or your grad degree as sort of like an investment. It is truly an investment because you're going to invest time, you're going to invest money in these things. And so when you think about that, and if your return on investment is staying in that country, getting a good job to be able to pay the bills, I would say start thinking about it from the moment you are considering applying to schools, right? Think about the kind of schools that you want to go to, and do your recruiters or do your target employers recruit from that school? I think a lot of people sometimes just apply to schools with the hopes of moving here and they find it difficult recruiting. A lot of schools have what we call sort of like the development arm, where they have these connections and interactions with employers, and they frequently have recruiting events. So I knew, for example, when I was in school, a lot of the big names came to school, big and small. Everybody comes to Harvard to recruit. That's one of my major deciding factors on accepting my Harvard MBA. Just because I knew that I was going to find it much easier to recruit when I think about that. With regards to staying back, thinking about like sponsorship, that's also a good thing to think about, right, when you're considering your employers. Typically, we have some big employers who always sponsor from day one. So the big tech people, Amazon, Google, Facebook, they have historically sponsored from day one. I believe Netflix as well. But when you also look at some big companies, McKinsey, banks, they don't typically sponsor. McKinsey actually, I think, sponsors from your second year or third year at McKinsey. I think that's the typical consulting sort of like framework. The major banks do not sponsor. So you would need to think about that as you're going through school. I believe some people also have different strategies for this as well. Some people come to school and try to give back to their kid while they're here so that their kid can also get like citizenship. Some people already make other plans to make sure like their stay is here. So I think that's something that we should think about before studying. I have a question here. How do you blend into study and teaching style and curriculum in the US? Is it really the same as we have here in Nigeria? It's quite different. I think every school has their own curriculum and teaching style. Curriculum is just vastly different. Even within the US is different. So you really want to do your research about like what the curriculum is like. Are they heavily focused on one sort of like business function or industry versus the other? What is the teaching style like? I think you can group the teaching style into sort of two broad teaching styles, right? Like there's the classroom lecture style, and there's also sort of like the case method where you do a lot of prep work yourself ahead of time and come to the class and discuss solutions, discuss your thoughts on what you think the answers are. I hope I answered the question, Ruth. Festus, you have a question.
Hi, Bodun. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I just really needed to know how you were able to get through the consulting before really shifting into the operations where you are right now. Thank you. And that's my question. Thank you.
Festus, you're asking how did I get through consulting? Did you mean how did I apply, or how did I get through the work style? Can you please clarify?
Yes. How did you get the work started? I know you said immediately after your MBA, you had to switch into consulting before getting into the operations. So I really needed to know how you were able to transit from being a consultant to operations. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And that's why I mentioned that the MBA is sort of like a roundabout, right? Like a lot of MBAs out there, the Harvard MBA is actually a general management MBA. So in my class, we had lawyers, doctors, engineers, teachers, people who did history, art, like different things, who come in to learn about like the business world, and you're able to take on like challenges or like different roles in organizations across. And so that made the transition from consulting to operations, or if I wanted to go to finance or legal or something, and that would have made it easier because of sort of like the academic curriculum of the MBA. Joseph has a question here. What is the level of possibility or probability of being able to get a job as an international MBA student graduate in the US? Joseph, do you mean get a job while in school or get a job after school? while you type your answer, I will respond to Angela. What is the major culture shock for the first time immigrant coming from Nigeria to the US? I think there are a number of culture shocks for me. Number one is the US is huge, but what I mean huge, think about the US as like multiple countries in one. And so I found it like shocking, or like a culture shock that a law in a state might be legal in another state. So you have to like think about like the location of where you are and be more cognizant of like the local laws there, so you don't get into trouble. I think another thing that was a culture shock for me was just how you relations with friends and everything, right? So I just give you an example. Typically in Nigeria, you go out to celebrate someone's birthday dinner or someone's birthday lunch, right? Like it's someone paying for everything. But in America, you can expect that everybody's almost going Dutch. So that was a culture shock for me as well. You experience like different things, but I don't think it's nothing significant that you cannot handle or navigate through. I think one thing just to help you navigate those different culture shocks is to make friends with locals, right? Like ask clarifying questions, get to know them better so that you understand these things before they happen or while they're happening. Joseph, you responded, you said getting a job after graduation. It's possible to get a job after graduation. Like I mentioned, you have to think about the school you're planning to apply to, who's your target employer, and does your target employer recruit from that school? Two easy ways to check that. One, call the school and ask, hey, which organizations do you have relations with that do come to school to recruit? Or do you host career fairs, and who are typically there? Two, the second way to verify this is also to check LinkedIn, right? Look at the company, look at the people working for that company, and check out where they got their master's degree from. And then you start to see themes of where employers typically recruit from. Ruth, I see a question from Ruth here. I have another question. An MBA is pretty broad. What is the best area you believe we should specialize in for the US? I saw schools that have concentrations in global supply chain, business analytics, human resources. Yes, Ruth, the MBA is very broad. And like I mentioned, it's broad for a reason, right? It's designed to be sort of like this pivotal educational experience where you can, in literal words, pivot right into different business functions or industry. And so to answer your question, I would say like applying or selecting the school you want to get into will require you to do your due diligence to understand what is the curriculum? Do they have a concentration around a specific function or industry? And two, who are the recruiters who come to those schools? And that will give you information on what schools you want to apply for, what schools you want to select. Harvard is a general management MBA. What that means is that it teaches you like the broad general like business sense. In your second year, you do get to pick your own classes. So for example, you want to major in finance, you want to do real estate, you want to do a marketing function, you want to change industry to supply chain, you can do those classes to mix and match. The good thing about big schools, especially the Big Ten, is Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Columbia, NYU, Kellogg, like the list goes on. Is those schools are big, and so you are able to take classes with the other schools associated to that school. So I'll give you an example, right? Harvard has the business school, but also Harvard has the engineering school, has the School of Economics, has the School of Policy, has like a medical school, has just different schools. And so if you're trying to, for example, you are a doctor, you're trying to get your MBA because you want to get experience managing a healthcare business, right? Just assuming. So you can do your MBA at Harvard, but you can also take classes in the medical school. So say you want to get more sort of like education on like sort of a specific medical practice, you can do that. Another example, right? Like let's go all the way to the East Coast, Stanford. You want to get your MBA, but you also want to get classes on sort of like tech, coding, those sort of things, right? Like Stanford has their engineering program. You can do the same. Another example, you are a structural engineer. You want to get an MBA that has a bit of engineering and MBA to it. MIT has both. That you can do that. So doing the research, I think, will really help you a lot. Any other question?
All right, I see Festus and I hope again. So Festus.
Thank you very much, Bodun. Again, I know most of the big schools have high tuition fee, and ranging from $50,000 and above $1,000. And for someone like me who want to go for school that have tuition fee for about $33,000. And what do you expect if the big school has a range of recruiters coming there? And for those schools with a low tuition fee, apparently those big names, those companies doesn't come around. What will be your advice for someone like me that is really looking at school with a tuition fee around $35,000 a year? Thank you, Bodun, again. It's my pleasure meeting you here. I know we've worked together while you're in McKinsey, and I really want to thank ProConnect for bringing you here for us to also gain from what you have achieved. Thank you, and over from me.
Festus, I think that's a good question. You can think about your strategy in two ways. Like I said, I think the master's program is an investment, and you should think about return on investment, bang for buck. One way you can do it is like thinking about like a low cost of investment. So you're going to the schools with cheaper tuition. I think that will mean a couple of things, right? Like thinking about that school, do your target recruiters come to that school? And if not, that will mean you're going to have to do more work to get in front of those recruiters. And so you have to be prepared to do those work. Couple of things that you could do to get those recruiters, to get in front of those recruiters. You could attend conferences, right? A lot of schools have their Africa business conferences where they get a lot of recruiters coming. I know MIT has one. Who else do I know have one? Stanford has one. I think the biggest is the one at Harvard. So you can attend those conferences. Recruiters typically come there, and you can get face time with them. And so if you think about your return on investment there, it could be pretty significant in the sense that you pay a low tuition, but you still get a job offer at like Amazon, McKinsey, Google, Bain, BCG, all of the likes. But that will require you to do a lot of hard work to get in front of them. The second side is you could also like go the high route, right? The almost more easier route where you pay the higher tuition and you have recruiters chasing you, right? And that's going to be helpful because now you're going to have different choices to be able to pick from. You're going to have a wide selection to pick from. That said, I think you should not discount a school because of the high cost of tuition. There are a number of scholarships that are available for these different schools. So be it a low tuition school or high tuition school, they typically have scholarships that are targeted towards people coming in from, developing countries. There's some that are also targeted towards people with good grades, different things. You can apply for scholarship grants. One thing I wish I knew before coming into school was to have an idea coming into school. During school, they have a lot of sort of venture capitalists like competition or incubator competition where you can pitch ideas and you can win cash. A lot of this cash is not tied to like equity of the business or tied to what is it called? not tied to equity of the business or you succeeding or anything. A lot of them is just grant that you can use for whatever you want to do. So you can also think about that as well as you think about financing your education. The last part I would say is with regards to getting the money to pay, the big schools have their own banks. And so you're able to get loans at a much affordable rate because it's from the school's bank. The school's bank is going to give you cheaper loans with less questions asked because they believe in their curriculum and the guarantee, and they understand that you'll be able to get a job. They're actually going to help you get a job. So that's something to think about. I have a question here. What is the biggest and most important thing that big recruiters look for in a candidate apart from grades? Actually, when you go into grad school and recruiting, recruiters don't look at grades, or majority of them don't look at grades. I think a lot of things that they look at is sort of like your experience. They look at your executive presence. They look at your ability to convey your message in a succinct manner. They look at like what sort of like insight will you be able to provide the company. So I know that a lot of recruiters, if you're thinking about an MBA, they mostly don't look at grades. I think a lot of like the Big Ten don't even give you a grade when graduating, right? That's it. So everybody just graduates and that's it. And they don't have a transcript for you. I know Harvard doesn't have a transcript, so they're not looking at grades. I can only take one more question because I have to hop off now. Any more questions?
Any other questions from you?
All right, in the absence of any question, thank you so much for your time, Tim. It was nice meeting everyone. Hopefully we can get in touch later. Bye.
Thank you very much, Adebodu. Thank you for the insights you offered. All right. Then we've come to the end of this session. Apologies for the mix up in time. We got the time wrong because of the time difference. We will share the recording as the session as soon as we log off every day.